Hi, I'm Paula Kadima, co-director of the Sustainable Environmental Design Master's Program at the AA School of Architecture in London. I'm here to introduce the program. The SED program has a global reach. We deal with most climates in the world and with a wide variation of urban contexts in different parts of the world. Our students come from over 50 different countries, and the way we respond to that is by dealing with different urban environments and climates. I am now going to show you a few slides which will illustrate how our program is approached and how we deal with our teaching and learning activities. Our key objectives are to improve environmental quality in cities, to achieve independence from non-renewable energy sources, and to develop an environmentally sustainable architecture which can adapt to climate change. At the core of our approach is research, and we learn how to do research by being able to focus on important questions, like, for example, what makes a good environment indoors? Or what makes a good environment outdoors? Supporting our research aims is our TOT program, which consists of a number of TOT lectures that deal with concepts, the principles for design, a number of software workshops that give us the tools for analyzing and undertaking design research, and projects which deal with practice. As I mentioned earlier, our reach is global. Over the last 20 years, our students have developed some 750 projects around 150 cities in 60 different countries and very different climates. We measure environmental conditions, and we use the measurements to calibrate software that allows us to model and simulate conditions, thereby extend our capabilities. So rather than to have to measure for a whole year, we can measure a whole year in just a few seconds. And that allows us to predict what might happen in a virtual building. Over time, and across all seasons and space, and its different rooms and spaces. And from simulation, we can engage in design research and back to simulation, if that is needed, as we develop the project. London is our laboratory for half of the year in our first two terms. And we start the first term of the year with taking on the study with some selected London buildings. What do these buildings tell us? And in the second term, the insights and findings from the studies are input as starting questions for design research and design projects. What can we tell back? The dissertation project is the main piece of work done individually by our students. That allows an individual agenda to be developed that provides choice of contexts, climate, building type, research agendas, and so forth. There are some favorite topics that our students like to engage with, one of which is the urban morphology, the way in which the urban block shapes itself. The issues that entails, the possibilities that we can have in improving its ecology and environmental performance, that's the strategic level. But also at the most specific level of a design project that looks at the innovative ideas of the expression of the urban block in different climates. We are looking for a new architecture for the tropics. Architecture is to some extent inspired from the tradition of the climate in these areas and expresses the principles in innovative ways. The perforation of the facade of the building in order to allow air permeability, and the use of local materials, the good level of shading and solar protection, and so on. But also the transitional spaces and the adaptable spaces in between, etc. The course includes building visits and study trips in the UK and abroad. These are some of the last year's building visits. It included a visit to the Velodrome, another to the LSE, which were guided by members of our staff who are also in practice and were involved in the environmental studies of these projects. But we also went to Hook Park to do some experiences, such as these that you are seeing now on the screen. These are some thermal images taken by our students on the various buildings which are constructed around Hook Park, which is another facility of the AA in Dorset. So our students also, we have every year a trip abroad, and this is an example of last year's. We went to Bologna, where we have collaborated with SOS and Mario Cucinella's team. Our students went there to present our work and exchanges, and the students there in Italy have also presented their work. These are also some building visits we did in Italy. And this trip also took place at the occasion of the Venice, the Biennale in Venice. Our students also we encourage our students also to build small structures. These are just a few examples. The top two images are from structures built in Ghana, and the bottom left is a structure built in Greece, and the bottom right is a tent built in Sharjah. We explore the relationship between practice and research and have collaborations with leading architectural practices and environmental engineering consultancies in London. Each year, several architects, engineers, and researchers are invited to present projects that illustrate their practice and experience with sustainable environmental design. But we also like to promote our work wherever we can. This is the end of the year projects review at the AA 2 years ago. Here, you see an exhibition of 12 projects by 12 of our Indian students, which we brought back to India at the occasion of the International Player Conference in Ahmedabad in December 2014. We tend to present 10 to 20 papers per year in journals and conferences, and also like to win awards. These are some examples. But we also have fun in the studio and party sometimes. Now I'm going to turn to my colleagues here. Here is Melissa Romo and Balint Pakosh. Melissa is an MArch student and Balint is an MS student. So Balint just finished and Melissa is doing the 16-month MArch. So I wanted to ask you a first question. I know you have collaborated together with another colleague in the first 2 terms. You did the case studies in term 1 and the building study in term 2 in the same team. Can you let us know about your experience and how you enjoyed the program?
Yes. Hello everyone. So I'm going to talk about the term 1 project. and Melissa can continue with the term 2 project. So we form teams in the beginning of the term, and then we choose buildings already built once as case studies. And afterwards, what is happening is that we visit these buildings, we talk to the architects, we try to collect every possible published information from the internet, as well as we do measurements inside of the buildings related to thermal comfort, related to daylight. We place monitoring instruments, so we do very precise measurements of the building. And afterwards, we use these measurements to construct a model of the building in a software environment, which we can use afterwards to test a variety of different things and how they influence the environmental performance of this building. So I would compare it to something like medical dissectioning in medical school, when you learn where is what, and if you change something additionally, how is it influencing the overall performance of the building. So it's a very interesting exercise.
What
Yes.
about you, Melissa?
Well, during term 2, term 2 project is more about starting the design proposal and to apply all the knowledge that, as Valin said, that we learned before. So it's very challenging, first of all, because we are working in a team. So as an architecture and in the architectural field, we all know that it's very difficult to take all the decision making. And at the same part, we have to apply all the knowledge that we learn from the sustainable section. So we were given a plot in London, and we have to make all the analysis of the site, all the analysis of the climate, of the weather, and also introduce to the future scenarios and how the building will not only act now, so also in the future years. So I think it was very interesting, because at the end, we end up with this product, this architectural product that was very satisfying for us, and that we can really see the application and the studies of the site, of the context, and how the weather affects every process and every step in the design process, especially when the basis of the project is to achieve a high-performing building.
Now a little bit on your dissertation. So Balint, you are Hungarian, but you decided to take the challenge of doing your dissertation focused on a country that you knew very little. Do you want to let us know a little bit, how did you come to this idea, and how did the experience from the 2 first terms feed up and helped you in the development of your dissertation?
Yes, so in my dissertation project I chose to work with Lagos, Nigeria, and addressing the challenge of low-income housing, which is largely neglected at this moment. The motivation is the fact that we are expecting more than 2 billion people in cities before 2050, and the vast majority of these people are coming to developing countries. The population of Africa, for example, is doubling, so it's a very present, very relevant issue, as well as solving the way we solve these problems, because if we keep exporting the Western model of building to these very different climates, it's just
Shall I show you
work.
some slides of your dissertation?
Certainly, yeah. So that's where the motivation is coming from. As an architect, I think if you're looking to do something impactful, you might as well search in the developing world, as there is a lot to do. And yes, it was a very interesting project. I went to Lagos for 2 weeks. I did field work there. I was visiting the low-income settlements in the city and engaged in learning about their traditions, space use, climate. So it's very interesting, and just finished recently.
Okay, now I'm going to ask Melissa. You still doing your dissertation because you are in the 16 months program, and I know you're designing for Mexico. You're Mexican, and how are you experiencing this whole process? And in your case, because you're now in the design phase, how do you think that all the two first terms have contributed to where you are at the moment?
Well, it has been quite challenging because, first of all, in the first two terms, we were focused only in studying the weather in London, the climate of London. So when I go back to the climate of my hometown, even if it's a climate and a place where I have been raised and I've been spending the last years of my life there, it's quite interesting to start studying in another point of view, in a more scientific point of view, where you understand what are the main strategies and the main problematic in your climate. So I think it was very important from the first term 1 and 2, that we can take all these conclusions, that we learn how to use the tools, the softwares and everything. And after, I think that during the dissertation, the most important part is to end up with some kind of design guidelines that could help me to apply all this knowledge back at home. And also the main focus of my dissertation is the residential buildings.
Maybe we can have a look on some of the slides of Melissa.
So the main focus of my dissertation is to reduce the discomfort hours that are primarily found in the detached houses in the suburbs of Mexico City, where we can see, for example, that the climate in Mexico, it's quite interesting because it's not extreme, but we have a lot of fluctuations during the day and the night. So these invite us to investigate deeper the strategies that we should apply and how we can learn from other countries as the UK, from their regulations and from the different outcomes that they have reached until now, and how to apply them to this climate. So it has been a different process, but we are reaching something.
So I know, Melissa, that you want to go back to Mexico and carry on your work there. But unlike Melissa, Balint, you just submitted your dissertation, your MSc, and I know that you want to stay in London and you are at the moment looking for a job. So how do you think, or how do you feel that the SED program has helped you or is helping you and influencing you on your job hunt?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm planning to stay in London for a few years to gain some internationally relevant experience. LCD has been helping me in a way that I took 1 year off to think about important things or meaningful things for the profession. And for example, now I'm also considering the option of working for a consultancy, which I never did before. So not only architecture jobs. And during the course, we met quite a few people who either own their businesses or work for these kind of firms. So it's a good networking opportunity for the students to build some relationships so that you can show people how you work, how you're thinking. So afterwards, as you're anyway already in London, it will be likely that if they need someone, they will get back to you.
So I wanted to thank you once again to Melissa Romo and to Balint Pakos. And maybe, do we have time to answer some questions from the floor? Well, I have here one question, which is, what is the difference between the MSc and the MArch? Well, I think that with what you just said, there was something which was highlighted, is that the MSCs will be engaged on a research which will lead to an applicability. And the main difference is that the MArchs, they will stay a longer period, which will allow them to develop a design application. So they will have to have a site like Melissa. She's doing her project in Mexico City. And I would say that these are the main differences. But the two first terms, both students work together. Then I have here another question, which is what are the fees? Well, the fees will be announced via our website in January 2019. The next question, will I become a qualified architect upon completion? Well, if you wish to register as an architect in the UK, you must successfully obtain first ARB Part 1 and ARB Part 2. And you can also contact the undergraduate admissions team for further information. And another question is, can I apply without an undergraduate degree in architecture? Which means, what are the acceptable related disciplines? Well, most of our students are architects, but we have sometimes engineers also applying to the SED, and occasionally we have landscape architects, so it's not necessarily to be just architects. And the last question, well, I think the last question is answered with our discussion. What are my career prospects after I complete this program? But maybe Melissa Romo wants to add something.
Yes, well, I think that it's very wide, the prospects that you can have after finishing the program, because you can be rather, as Valin mentioned before, like more focused on the consultancy, environmental consultancy, or also you can go back to work as an architect and apply all this knowledge already in the buildings that you will be developing, rather in a company or by your own. So I think it's quite wide.
Yeah, another interesting path for some people is that many from SED become academics. So if you're interested in academic research, scientific research, then it could be also an option for you.
Is there anything else you want to let us know about the highlights of the program?
That is, I mean, it has been quite a very nice experience to be here in London, to be in the AA, to be in the program, and that we highly recommend it to come and live this experience.
Yeah, what I would say is that I had several years of work experience before coming here, and I found it very useful having some knowledge already, being able to find my topics and motivate myself in going through SED. So in case you're already experienced and you're hesitating, I think it's worth, even if it takes loans, to buy yourself out of work for a year so that you have time to think about these things.
All right. And one last question. I know that you enjoyed quite well all the building visits and the study trip. What were the highlights on the experience on these visits?
Well, I enjoy like a lot the experience that we have in Hook Park, because we were there with the students from Design and Make. So it was quite interesting because we were in these premises, in the outdoor, in the forest, in the middle of the wild and everything. So it was really interesting to start sharing the knowledge and to comparing and to get some knowledge from the other students from the other graduate programs. And I think the experience was really nice. And I don't know.
Yeah, the other thing is when we went to Italy on a study trip and we had the chance to meet Mario Cucinella Architects. It's about an 80 people company and they have a school under the same roof. It's called School of Sustainability. So we could meet all these other architects, students of sustainability, and see how the office works. And it was really interesting to see how research, practice and education is happening under the same roof. So I think that was really inspiring.
Okay, maybe I will leave the few last minutes to show, if you want to ask us something else, our address, sed.aaschool.ac.uk. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.